Since his election, he has brought renewed focus to empowering the GOP grassroots, guided by the conservative ideals embodied in the party's platform. Inspired by the statesmanship of Ronald Reagan, James was unfortunately too young to vote for the president in the 1984 election. Undeterred, he went to work helping a conservative run for a seat in the U.S. Senate in an area where more than 70% of the voters voted for Walter Mondale. Chairman Dickey grew up in Fort Worth, where he graduated valedictorian of his high school class. He earned a bachelor's degree from Stanford University in political science and English. He holds a master's in business administration from Baylor. He is the co-founder and a board member of a small insurance firm that provides agents with products they need to do their jobs quickly and easily. Chairman Dickey built a reputation as a conservative leader and one of America's hardest to reach Democrat strongholds during his 3 years as chairman of the Travis County Republican Party. He helped orchestrate several come-from-behind victories as the party successfully held the line in notoriously liberal Austin. He's been married to his wife Linda for 31 years, and they have 3 children, Jay, Donna, and Dakota. And now I will do the bio for Lieutenant Colonel West. He is the third of 4 generations of military servicemen in his family. During his 22-year career in the United States Army, Lieutenant Colonel West served in several combat zones and received many honors, including the Bronze Star, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, 3 Army Commendation Medals, 1 with Valor Device, and a Valerius Unit Award. In 1993, he was named the U.S. Army ROTC Instructor of the Year. In November of 2010, Allen was elected to the United States Congress, representing Florida's 22nd District. As a member of the 112th Congress, he sat on the Small Business and Armed Services Committees and was instrumental in passage of the 2011 and 2012 National Defense Authorization Acts. He is a Fox News contributor and an author of many books. Lieutenant Colonel West is a commissioned officer in the Texas State Guard. He is a member of the Society of the 1st Infantry Division, 4th Infantry Division, and the 101st Airborne Division. He is married to Dr. Angela Graham West, a financial advisor, and they have 2 daughters, Aubrey, a board-certified physician assistant, and Austin, a flight attendant. We thank y'all very much.
To decide who goes first, we're going to go ahead and flip a coin. Chairman Dickey is the incumbent, so we'll let you call it. Mark Reed is going to flip the coin.
Heads, tails. You have to say if you want to receive the ball or no. Heads.
It is.
Tails.
It is tails. You like to go first or second? Here, go second. All right. We'll go ahead and boot you. Come on up, James.
Are we supposed to write question?
I think we were supposed to probably sanitize that before we gave it to you. So,
Fine.
no, actually, Carol Maxwell
Oh, you want?
showed up late. And so,
All right, Carol, we tried to hold off as long as we could. All right, Carol Maxwell, you are being recognized for outstanding Republican leadership in Collin County. God bless you, Carol. Thank you so much for keeping Texas red. Thank you.
all right, so we'll go with our first question. So from the perspective of the Republican Party of Texas, the RPT, talk to us about what success looks like to you and what measures are used by you to identify or gauge success. So whether it be elections,
Sure.
donations, passing planks, resolutions.
So actually, I've got some things to talk about that. But the first thing I want to say, especially on the night when we're recognizing and honoring precinct chairs, would everybody who's a precinct chair, would you please raise your hand? Thank you, and God bless you. The shortest answer for success in the RPT is many thousands more people who raise their hand. I will tell you, my life was changed by my precinct chair. I showed up to vote at 6:45 on election day in 2008 when, in the primary, if y'all don't remember, our choice by that time was McCain or McCain. All right? And I was so frustrated, and the precinct chair said, "Hey, would you stick around for 15 more minutes? We're going to do a precinct convention right after the vote. How about stick around and do that?" And I had no idea, but he was a nice guy, so I was like, "Yeah, sure, okay, I'll hang around." And I went to the precinct convention, and then there were 4 of us there, including the Denton County tax assessor collector and my precinct chair, and we all voted ourselves in delegates to the Senate district convention. And 2 Saturdays later, I found myself a delegate to the Senate district convention, and they were talking about how amazing the state convention was. And so I applied to be a delegate to the state convention. Well, nobody had ever met me, but I had a nice interview with the nominations committee, and so they let me go as an alternate. So the convention, which ironically was in Houston that year, it was the last time I was in Houston, I took my kids with me. I went down to the convention in 2008, and it was a presidential year, so there was an election for national nominations, or national delegates, and so I ran to be a national delegate. Nobody knew me, and I got stomped. And my kids were with me, and they said, "Dad, you always tell us to keep trying and do more and be involved." And so I ran again to be an alternate delegate, and then that year I was an alternate delegate to the national convention and learned so much about how bottoms up our party is and how impactful any one of us can be if we get involved. And it doesn't take a title, it doesn't take celebrity, it doesn't take money. It just takes willingness to work. And every one of you who serve as a precinct chair, you should know that night, that precinct chair changed the rest of my life. I wouldn't be sitting in this seat right now if I had not seen what the impact of the Republican Party of Texas is and one person in the Republican Party of Texas could be. And going on to serve as precinct chair, as county chair, now as state chair, now at the state level, there are a whole bunch of things that measure success. There are some people who are actually saying the primary turnout measures success. There are 2 things in that same 2008 election. People have short memories, but those of us who were around here then, that was the last big contest on the Democrat side. Hillary versus Obama, right? Now they've got Biden versus Bernie, right? But then they had Hillary versus Obama. Well, they had 2.8 million Democrat voters turn out in the primary in 2008. Conversely, we had 1.3 million people turn out in our primary. Yet, McCain won by a mile. We had a good year. But here's the important thing. We've had 20% increase in registered voters since the 2008 election. And yet in this last primary, their total turnout, even with a giant fight, big fight right at the top of their ballot, their turnout was 700,000 fewer voters than 12 years ago. But on our side, we had 700,000 more voters than 12 years ago, even though we had no fight at all. President Trump, God bless him, won 94% of the Republican Party primary, as he should, right? And Senator Cornyn won 74%. So we didn't have a fight at the top of our ballot. We had people who were energized and organized. So the back to the question of what will, as we look at the next 2 years, what would be success? And as I look at the last 2 years, what is success? We've had a significant increase in transparency, significant improvement in operations, massive increases in success of working together. We already have millions of dollars in the bank to hire field staff for this year. Now, I've heard people actually criticize that we have money in the bank that's dedicated to purposes like turning out voters in November. Personally, I think that's part of the point of the party, is to have people dedicated to turn out voters in November. But the other thing we did, success in the party is, are we having more of an impact and are we getting better results overall? And we are having more of an impact. We had more of an impact in the legislature. It was nowhere near what I wanted to be, but we made significant gains, and better yet, we laid the groundwork for a serious victory going forward. And any conservative knows that the Texas legislature was set up on purpose to make it hard to change things, which thank God it was, because 112 years when the Democrats were in charge of Texas, think how much they would have screwed it up if our Constitution wasn't set that way, right? So, but significant gains in the legislature, significant gains in operations, significant gains in funds. Last year, we raised $3.3 million. And again, some people are like, well, but you promised some donors that would be done for voter registration. Yes, because we want to register voters. In fact, that's a new initiative we have, 10K for 10R. How many of you have already signed up for 10K for 10R? Good. We need the rest of you to sign up for this. It's the easiest volunteer program you've ever seen. If you sign up, we will mail you the names and phone numbers of 10 people as close to you as we can get, who we're 90% sure are hardcore Republicans, and we're 90% sure are not yet registered to vote in Texas. And through that program, we have already signed up 3,300 volunteers, and we have already registered and confirmed with the Secretary of State new registrations of 70,000 Republicans. Those people are going to turn out in November. And thanks to those volunteers, we're going to make sure they turn out in November. And thanks to the money we raised, we're going to have the field staff to help support those volunteers and to help make sure we have victory. So this year, it won't be victory if we don't deliver President Trump the White House. We are going to do that in Texas. We're going to deliver President Trump the White House. We're going to win at Senate. We're going to win every statewide elected office for the 13th election in a row. We are going to retain the Texas House. We're going to win back some extra Texas House seats. And we are going to continue to grow our efforts in city council and school boards and all the way down the ballot. Thank God for all of you who are running for city council and school boards. God bless you.
All right, in 2018, the party had 331 planks or platforms, and those are broken out and listed under various categories of principles, business, commerce, and transportation, constitutional, finance, education, a few others. When we have such a large number of planks, how do we prioritize and what the most important ones are, and what's the process of how we work with our reps and senators in turning some of those higher priority planks into bills that get voted on?
So we actually have three different things at the party. We have our principles, which are core 10 principles that are eternal-ish, right? The closest thing to eternal life on earth, right? That is not heavenly inspired are our principles, and those are things like fighting for life and traditional marriage and the things that we fight for decades in a row. And then we have our legislative priorities. Those are our top priorities that we proactively go after and really advance. And we did that. We did that with life for the first time ever. We ended funding for taxpayer funding for Planned Parenthood in Texas. That was a big deal. For the first time ever, we got unlicensed carry after disasters. Now that's not enough. I want full constitutional carry. I don't want to have to get a license. I'm not going to get a license. And we're gonna win constitutional carry, but we got unlicensed carry after a disaster. We did make gains in religious liberty. We did make gains. We made gains on property tax, and we're already working on ending M&O and switching that tax off of property tax. Although we had some friends who opposed us on that effort, so. We've got multiple things that we're going to continue to work for, but it's up to the party delegates at the convention to decide whether all those 5 still stay our legislative priorities or not, whether they're 5, whether they're more, whether they're less. But then the platform, and I didn't really get this until I started really advocating for advancing our platform as chair, and when I ran for chair and I committed advancing the platform. the platform is not about prioritization and selection. The platform is it's our reference book, right? When a reporter calls me and says, what is your position on NAFTA? I say, give me a second, and we whip open the platform and say, it says it's very important that we renegotiate. We believe in free and fair trade, but we think NAFTA is a bad deal and we want a better deal. Bingo. Our position on NAFTA has already been set by our delegates. I don't have to think about what that is. I'm certainly not going to wing it or make it up. I'm going to fight for what they said. But that's a responsive, it's a reference point, it's our touchstone. Nobody has to memorize it. Nobody has to agree with 100% of it either, because we're independent thinkers, right? We believe in personal responsibility. One of the upsides of having 200 or 300 planks is that everybody recognizes that no one elected official is going to swear permanent fealty to every one of those 200 or 300. The question is, and my encouragement to every one of those elected officials is, hey, look, read through the platform, find the couple that you don't agree with, and talk to voters about those, and make sure your voters agree with you on the ones you don't agree with the party on. Then great. Then your voters will support you when you don't help with those. But in the meantime, the way we approached it, I set meetings with, our goal was to meet with every single Republican elected official in the legislature during session. We weren't able to accomplish that. Session gets really crazy towards the end. But I met with dozens upon dozens of legislators. And with every one of them, my question was, which of your bills are supported by our platform? Whichever of your bills are supported by our platform, we will help you get those passed. And in fact, we had 100 bills passed that advanced 49 of our platform planks. It's double what the party had ever seen before in terms of bills passed, and it was significant accomplishments on things that helped everyday Texans, like finally getting an end to red light cameras, right? Yeah. And as somebody who lives in an unincorporated part of Travis County on purpose, finally, for the first time in Texas history, taxing entities are not allowed to annex you and your neighbors without a vote of you and your neighbors. Right? So we didn't get everything we wanted, but we made serious accomplishments. And if you just change how you're looking at the platform, I trust the delegates to come up with the right ones, to come up with the right prioritization. We'll see what they come up with this time, and they may choose to make it a lot shorter. They may not.
All right, so overall the feeling is that Democrats have been wanting to fight for our youth for several years now. So talk to us about what your efforts have been on college campuses the last couple of years and the types of resources that we're using to engage young adults.
Sure. Well, I guess, first of all, any historical appreciation realizes this is not a new problem, right? It was Churchill who said, if you're not their equivalent of leftist when you're young and conservative when you're older, you didn't have a heart and you don't have a brain, right? I mean, this is not a new problem that young people tend to skew left. Kent State was young people, 50 years ago, right? 55 years ago. So, but what have our efforts been? Actually, I won't even talk about just the last 2 years. I'll talk about right now. We have 40 college students volunteering right now on campaigns during spring break that we are recruiting from and sending all around the state to help with campaigns. And we are prepared to offer those folks, like we're talking to them, about changing up their class load so that we can have them for the whole spring quarter and we can have them for all summer and they can take the fall off and be dedicated full-time in the fall. Our mission, we've been working with college Republicans to help them grow their clubs. We have been working with high school Republicans because there have been some high school principals who have taken the position that any political club is not allowed in the school, and that's ridiculous and absurd, as saying that any religion is also not allowed. That is a freedom association issue. So we are helping fight for those. We're growing the high school Republicans, we're growing the college Republicans. We are literally paying and recruiting them, and they're participating in our efforts. And the excitement that I see at the young Republicans, I'm very excited to be working with them to grow their efforts as well. We have amazing young Republicans in Texas, and we are bringing them into the fold and getting them involved. One of the best ways you can get involved, I know your county chair's here, Mark's here. One of the best ways you can get involved is use high schoolers for clerks during election windows. Every election window, a high schooler 16 and above with the principal's permission can get paid to work the election as a clerk. 16 and up. And I'll tell you, it is so eye-opening for a 16-year-old to sit there and see what the Democrats try to pull during election day. It is a life-changing impact. I did it in all over Travis County, and it was a massive way to get youth involved in Travis County with our party.
Kind of a similar follow-up to that regarding the Hispanic community, whose values and belief system as a whole seem to be more in line with the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party. So what are the efforts that are being put in place to bring over more of the Hispanic voters?
Well, first of all, people downplay the fact, the press loves to downplay the fact that in quite a few elections, Republicans in Texas have won a plurality, and there were a couple of cases where we actually won a majority of the Hispanic vote in Texas. So every time a reporter or a Democrat or both comes to me and says, isn't demography going to spell the end of the Republican Party of Texas? I push back heavily on that racist, baseless claim. And the reality is it is both racist and baseless. The things we have done have included being really intentional as we recruited staff. We already have more staff than we had the last two elections combined. A majority of our staff is female, minority, or both, and a full third of our staff is bilingual. We have Bianca D. Garcia. She is fantastic. She is our head of engagement. She came from the Valley. She's got assistants and deputies who work for her who are working in the Valley in South Texas and each of the major metro areas. She is doing a bang-up job in making sure we spread our message. When we did our biggest ever candidate recruiting effort last year, we had over 1,400 candidates, campaign workers, pay to attend a one-day intensive campaign training school, and that was part of the group of candidates we had. Democrats only put up 1,401 candidates in the last primary. We did 3,106. And a big part of that was the most diverse candidate pool we've ever put up. And that's because we were really intentional about recruiting to challenge incumbent Democrats. Now you notice I didn't say we were intentional about setting up a quota. It was not about that. It's about being welcoming and encouraging and saying, yes, even in this neighborhood, we, the Republicans, are going to show up and we're going to support and we're going to run and we're going to spread our message because our message is best, our policies are best. President Trump is showing that right now, and our results are showing that right now. We got the lowest Hispanic unemployment ever, the lowest black unemployment ever. We got the best female employment since the end of World War II. Republican policies lead to a better life for all, and it's just our job to communicate that. And with the increased staff, the increased candidates, the increased volunteers, the new registrations, through all of those initiatives, we are doing exactly that.
All right, a couple minutes to go here. I want to ask this one here. So we are in Collin County, so what level of RPT resources and support can we expect to be allocated to Collin County candidates for the November election?
Well, it's hard to get more resourceful than the chairman personally coming and block walking with candidates. I mean, I did that with Shelby and Lily over a year ago. I did that with Jeff and everybody else in November of 2018. We have paid attention to Collin County since I came on board. Now, partly that's because I raised my kids in Denton County, so I have a very special affinity for the Metroplex, and I'm determined to see that we succeed. The comments earlier about how important it is to have good judicial candidates in the area. We actually worked with Justice Jeff Boyd. We actually successfully recruited some judicial candidates for the first time in a few elections to run in Dallas. And that kind of effort, the DFW Metroplex is absolutely critical. I can tell you that of our 281 paid field staff that we are going to have spread out across the state by June, over 80 of them are going to be in the DFW Metroplex alone. And Collin County is going to get more than its fair share of that because we have a lot of attention on making sure we not only keep, but we make strong gains in all of those House races, all of the congressional races. I've already been working with Congressman Taylor, and we've already got a joint fundraising agreement. He is helping make sure that we have additional staff. And he's always been this way. He was always making sure that everybody in the area had extra resources to make sure we do well in Collin County.
All right. We are at time. I want to make this one quick. All right. Very specific. Moving into the November election, even in the next session, what are your top 3 specific goals? Just bullet point them.
Win for President Trump. Make serious gains in the Texas House. And seriously advance whatever legislative priorities our delegates choose at the convention.
Thank you. So as we bring in Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, just these questions are in some capacity, these are the topics and questions that the precinct chairs presented. Come on up, sir. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West.
Thanks for having me. I apologize for being dressed as a tree, but we're on our annual training. We're on our annual training right now, and I just drove in from Stephenville and going to have to drive back out there, so my apologies.
You're quite fine. All right, so our first question, with the Republican Party of Texas, the RPT, under the leadership of a chairman, Allen West. All right, talk to us about what success would look like from your perspective and what measures you would use to identify or gauge success.
Well, the measures of effectiveness, first and foremost, when you look at what just happened in this last primary election, Collin County was outvoted 15,000 by the Democrats. When you look down at Dallas County, where I live, we only had a 5 or 6% turnout. I was down in Lago Vista and Travis County, Williamson County. They only had a 5.1% turnout. We have got to inspire our side to come out and get them to understand how important it is. And the judge spoke about this earlier. We have got to educate our voters to go completely down through the ballot. We need to have ballot slates that are out there, because what the progressive socialist left does when they move into successful, positive, strong, conservative states, they go for the lowest level first. They go for the local level first. They go for school board, they go for city council, and then they take over your judgeships, because as they said, they understand that the 3 branches of rule, not really 3 branches of government, the 3 branches of rule are academia, media, and your judgeships. Yep. And that's why we lost 56 judgeships in 2018. So we've got to protect those judgeships. And I think the other thing that's most important is we have to go where they think they're the strongest. When you look at the greatest amount of failure of the left's policies, where do you find them? In the major urban centers. You see them in especially the minority communities and minority neighborhoods. Blacks and Hispanics are conservative in nature. Yes, we have got to consistently engage with them to get them to understand that, not just ramp up and show up for election cycles.
All right, and 2018, the RPT had 331 planks or platforms. After the state convention, that number's most likely to grow even higher this year. So they're broken out in several categories, but how do you go about prioritizing what the most important planks are, and how would the RPT, under your leadership, work with representatives and senators with turning some of the higher priority ones into bills?
Well, we have the principles, and I think the principles are strong. They're based upon individual rights and freedoms and responsibility and accountability, and making sure that we maintain the right relationship between the institution of government and the individual. If you understand the United States of America, if you understand Texas, the individual is sovereign over the institution of government. So that's the most important thing we need to be looking at as far as our legislative priorities, to make sure that we keep that right balance. Now, when we look at the platform and the planks and all of that, you know, I'm a boy from down south, and, you know, I used to just jump out of airplanes. I ain't the smartest guy, so, you know, it's kind of hard to try to memorize 332 things. But I think that it's very important that we have the grassroots involvement, that they bring up those resolutions. But the important thing is that we should also scrub those platforms and the planks to make sure that we reduce redundancies and duplicities, because as I learned early on, if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. So you have to be able to say, you know, when you look at your principles, those 10 principles, and you transition to those platforms and the planks, what are the priorities of the platform and planks that relate to those 10 principles and values?
All right. In counties that historically vote Democrat, Dallas, Travis, Harris County, several others throughout the state, with you as chairman, what would be some specific RPT efforts in those counties that could turn a few elections our way? Or do we just punt and use our limited resources in more strategic ways?
You know, one of the things, you know, I hate to use a military metaphor, but in the military, we don't believe in ceding territory to the enemy. Okay, and that's what we've done for far too long. You know, last week I was down at Southwest Dallas Republican Club. You know, the other side of the Trinity River, where we don't show up. There was 115, 120 people in DeSoto. 25% were black. Some of them were running for elected office. But see, the thing is that we can't just say that we have blacks running for elective office in these inner city communities. Think about the parable of the sower and the seed from Mark. You got to go out and fertilize that ground before you throw the seeds out there. Because if not, the seed's just going to land on the top of the ground. It's going to be parched. It's going to dry up. Or the seed will get picked off, which is what happens over and over again. So we have got to start having that engagement. We've got to have pastoral roundtables. You want to talk about making inroads into the black and Hispanic communities with the pastors. And we've got to get pastors to understand, why is it that you preach this stuff on Sunday, right, which is conservative in nature, but then Monday through Saturday you get stuck on stupid, okay? And then you're supposed to be the shepherd of this flock, but you're feeding your flock over to the wolves. Right. So we've got to have those real hard conversations. You know, I grew up in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. I grew up in the same neighborhood that gave us Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When I was born in 1961, I was born in a blacks-only hospital. But my parents raised me with conservative principles and values. But notice what I said? I used the plural, parents. The policies of the left have decimated the black family. You don't have fathers in the home. Think about President Trump when he gave that opportunity scholarship to the young 9-year-old girl from the inner city of Philadelphia who was there with her single black mother. I had a World War II veteran dad that looked at me at the age of 15 and challenged me to be the first officer in the family. See, that's what happens when you have strong families. And no, we can't punt our principles. We've got to put the other side on defense, especially where they have been creating victims for the past 60 or 70 years.
Well, let's talk about our youth here for a second then. In general, the consensus is that Democrats have been winning our youth for several years now. So talk about how you view the current RPT efforts on college campuses, and then what those efforts would look like with you as chairman.
Well, I sit as an honorary advisory board member for Turning Point USA, and I'm also one of the speakers for the Young America's Foundation. If you want, you can go. It was about 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks ago, I was on the campus of the University of Michigan. Not exactly a conservative institution, but it's at yaf.org, and I was at the University of Michigan speaking on the Second Amendment. And you can go. I've been to Cornell, I've been to DePaul University, I've been to Northwestern twice. We've got to go on these campuses. We've got to go in our high schools. Because what is happening in the United States of America, what is happening in Texas, is that our kids are not getting an education, they're getting an indoctrination. Yes. And we have so many good, strong, young, conservative Christian students that we have to support. And the first thing we got to do, folks, we got to stand up in our homes and support our children. We have to make sure that we are inculcating our principles and values to our children. But the Republican Party of Texas, if Allen West is hanging around with it, we're going to go behind the enemy lines and we're going to challenge these professors. Because if professors, think about this, Texas A&M University.
Sorry.
3 weeks ago, Texas A&M University had a program called Draggy Land. Oh, no whoop for that, huh?
No.
Okay. But I mean, this is supposed to be one of the most conservative college and universities in, well, yeah, definitely in Texas. I'm personal friends with the Commandant of the Corps of Cadets, Brigadier General Ramirez. There are professors at Texas A&M University that want to eliminate the Corps of Cadets.
I was in the Corps, that ain't gonna happen.
We say that, but if they continue to have control of the administration, because we have a trustee board here in the state of Texas that's not appointing conservative presidents. Katie Bartador. Austin Independent School District voted 5-0 last fall to teach a sex education curriculum to 3rd through 8th graders. You can go and review it. It's pornography. So this is what is happening to our kids. And so what are you going to do working with the legislators? I just want our legislators to stand up. You know, my mom taught me that a man must stand for something or else he'll fall for anything. We can't sit back and just allow ourselves to be steamrolled by the left. They've done it in Nevada, they've done it in Arizona, they've done it in Colorado, they've done it in New Mexico, in Virginia. They woke up in November 2019, they did it to them. And let me tell you something, they have Texas at the top of the list. To flip the Texas State House first and foremost because they want control of redistricting. That's what we must do. We must encourage our legislators. We must fight ourselves. We must become better educated, and we must empower our children. Proverbs 22:6, since we're in the church. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way that they should go, so that when they grow old, they shall not depart from it.
Amen. Amen.
We need some parents to start taking that to heart.
All right, follow up to that regarding our Hispanic community. So overall, I think the consensus from our party is that Hispanic values, the belief system, much more in line with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. You alluded to that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you view our current efforts, current RPT efforts to target Hispanics and to bring more over to our side?
I think, again, we need to have better policy inclusiveness. We need to have better engagement. You look at the Rio Grande Valley. It's very simple, folks. You look at a county-to-county breakdown map of Texas, you can see where the Democrats believe they're strongest. All the major urban population centers, and then you look down there along the Rio Grande Valley, and you see all the blue. You know, I've been down to Del Rio, I've been down to Eagle Pass, I've been down to McAllen, I've walked along the border, I stood at the Rio Grande River. These people want us to secure the border. They don't want to live in fear and be terrorized by the drug elements and the cartels and the gangs that are coming across our border. But if we're not showing up there to show that, hey, we're here, let's lock arms, let's talk about how we can help you to run and win these city council races, win these school board races. We got to build them up. We have to build up a farm team in these communities. Remember what I said? You got to keep the ground fertile, first and foremost, before you think you can just go down there and plant seeds. So they are looking for our voice. And I've told, you know, the Hispanic community that all you have to do is look at what the Democrats did to the black community.
That's right.
Since the Great Society programs of Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1965, look what happened. They decimated the family. Since Roe v. Wade, we have murdered 20 million black babies in the womb. I mean, the dearth of quality education, the gangs, the violence, everything. And they're going to do that to the Hispanic community because they're looking for the next electorate that they can have as victims. But if we just tell people it doesn't have to be that way. You know, I always tell folks what's the difference between Republicans and Democrats or conservatives and the left. We make victors. They make victors. Kid like me, how I got started, they would still have me back there in the old Fourth Ward neighborhood where I don't have any friends because they're all dead. But because I had solid, stable parents that raised me with conservative principles and values, that understood the quality of a good education, they didn't send me to the failing public school. They sent me to a small black Catholic school. I still have the scars on my knuckles from those nuns. But that set me on the right path. And that's what we must do. Think about the faces of those folks on the other side of the aisle during the last State of the Union address, when a 100-year-old Tuskegee Airman was recognized.
Right.
When that young girl got an opportunity scholarship. We need to show people that we are not going to relegate them to another generational aspect of victimization, Black, Hispanic, or otherwise.
Change gears here a little bit. We are in Collin County, so put you on the spot a little bit here. So under Chairman West, what level of RPT resources and support would we be able to expect to be allocated to Collin County candidates in the future?
Look, Collin County is behind enemy lines. Like I said, you lost by 15,000 votes to the Democrats. So I'm going to focus here. There's a saying, you move to the sound of the guns.
That's right.
And so the guns are, is that okay?
Yes, there was
If the
an
guns
amen.
are sounding off here, you got to move to the sound of the guns. You have to defeat the enemy. You are being targeted here. Michael Bloomberg is going to drop $8 million in the state of Texas as every town for gun safety, just the same as they did in Virginia, where he only spent $2 million. Look how he flipped at the State House and the State Senate. What does Michael Bloomberg want to do? He wants to run anti-gun State House candidates in North Texas. He's focusing on North Texas and Harris County. So that's where we have to go. We have to understand where they think they want to go to gain. We've got to be right there to prevent them. We've got to block them. So yes, anywhere that I look and see that we are behind, we can go out to East Texas, we can go out to West Texas, we're strong. We're good. We just got to encourage them that they have to have a voting turnout percentage from 80 to 100%. They can't have a 20, 30, 40% voter turnout. But we have to break this down. This is political calculus, where we look at precinct by precinct, where we can turn the tide against them. And I want to go over and talk to the knucklehead that decided to move Toyota North America to Plano, Texas, and tell him, when your employees screw it up here in Plano, Texas, in Collin County, where the heck are you going to move Toyota North America next? Okay? We have to start challenging these corporate and business owners to go out and talk to their employees, to get them to understand why you left a failing economic state to come here. But yet you still allow them to do exactly what God told to Lot and his family not to do when they were leaving Sodom and Gomorrah. Don't look back. So I think that's a great campaign slogan we can have. We can have billboards all over the place that say, don't look back.
All right, so if elected, what would be your top 3 or 4 priorities for the next 12 months or even going into the next session?
I think one of the key things is that we have got to do something about continue the growth, opportunity, and prosperity. The people here, you guys want the property tax reform. We've got to have the property tax reform. We've got to make sure we stay strong with our Second Amendment. We've got to make sure we are standing up for educational freedom. That's so important, that parents should not have to sit back and be relegated to send their kids to failed schools. We've got to sit down and talk about what life means. And we got to stand up for life. Because what I see happening is this move toward infanticide that really does disturb me in many ways. And so I think that those are really the 4 top priorities. But if there was a 5th priority, I just want people to understand how unique and how special Texas really is. How Texas is the beacon of liberty and freedom for the United States of America. And if Texas is the beacon for liberty and freedom for the United States of America, it's the beacon of liberty and freedom for the world.
Yeah. So you see the different styles. We're 3.5 minutes ahead out of the regular questions. We saw how it went with Chairman Dickey. So let's go to district judges. So we lost a lot of seats, right? So what are some specific efforts that we can go with going forward?
The first thing is, the judge said, we got to educate people about the judges.
That's right.
Folks, let me tell you something. There's no such thing as a nonpartisan race, okay?
Right.
They know who they are and they know what they stand for. We got to try them. But we have got to start raising up that farm team. I know that they've kind of canceled baseball season, but think about baseball. Baseball is all about building a farm team. Sometimes the success of a major league team, it starts down there at the single A level. or the AA level. So when I look at the judgeships that we have out there, we need to start developing that next generation of constitutional conservative jurists that understand that they don't make law, they interpret law. And they're going to interpret the law and they're going to defend the laws that we have here in the Constitution of the great state of Texas. So I want us to start developing a means by which we start to get some of these law school students. We got a great law school not too far away from us at SMU. And we start looking into picking out that talent that we can get out there and we can get them plugged in. So that's what we need. It's an internship program with our judicial candidates. And then the other thing is that educate people about who these judicial candidates are.
That's right.
Folks, you can't, my biggest concern for November 2020 is that people are so fired up for President Donald Trump, and he's done an incredible job, but people are going to go into the ballot booth, they're going to hit the top of the ticket, and then they're going to leave. Because think about what happened. We got outvoted by 68,000 votes by the Democrats in the state of Texas. You know why? I talked to a lot of people. They said it was a Democrat primary. Oh, President Trump was running unopposed. We should have far more votes in a Republican primary than later on, because this is where we pick our team.
Right.
This is where we pick our judges. This is where we pick, you know, the folks, our gladiators, our Spartans that are going to go out there on the battlefield. And we didn't. It's very disconcerting. Very disconcerting.
All right, so last question. How do you think your fundraising abilities versus?
Well, you know, I came back from Afghanistan in December 2007, and, you know, since then I've been in congressional races and conservative causes. So since January 2008, I've raised over $50 million for conservative causes and things of that nature. Young man, a young Texan that was pardoned by President Trump, Army First Lieutenant Clint Lawrence. We raised $6.5 million for his legal defense fund to keep that fight going for him. He spent 6 years too long in Fort Leavenworth prison. So we will raise some money, because the most important thing about getting people to give you their resources is that they feel inspired.
Yeah.
And that they can see a return on the investment that they're doing. So you will see a return on investment, because we're going to put up billboards. We're going to run ads. We're going to let the left in Texas know that we're here. We're going to challenge them in every single way, shape, form, and fashion. And that's what we must do. We cannot be silent anymore. Like I said once before, we got to come out of the catacombs.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay seated here, and we'll bring up Chairman Dickey as well. I'll give you guys the stage, so Chairman Dickey, go ahead and have a seat if you would. All right, Terry wanted me to remind you to fill out your voting slip. Well, you might, we got 20 minutes to left,
Yeah.
though.
Yep.
Might wait. All right, so I think on our joint questions, if we could maybe try to keep answers to the 2-minute mark, give or take. And I think we'll start with the question of, all right, let's get us a little order here.
Okay, so what the question is, so you have index cards on your table. Some people came in late.
Oh, yep. So, all right, so on your business cards, you are writing down, it's a straw poll of who you would vote for, who you prefer, right? And so you're going to,
One for free.
yeah. So we've got one for precinct chairs, right? And if you're a precinct chair, you're going to put your ballot in the bucket that Ronnie Spellman is carrying around. So this is Ronnie.
So to keep things orderly, so if you would just hang on. Oh, Gene if you would hang on. So on your way out the door, because we don't want to interrupt everybody listening to these guys here. So if you could do this quietly, and then just remember, Ronnie is doing for precinct chairs, and Rustin is doing for non-precinct chairs. Not right now, Ronnie or Rustin. You're going to get in trouble.
All right. Let's go back with our question. So the first joint question, within the RPT right now, what is the most important area of opportunity that you see that needs improved upon? And then what's the biggest challenge that we face right now within the RPT?
I think, again, as we talked about, is the biggest challenge to get the minority communities to understand that they're conservative in nature. And we've got to have that policy inclusiveness. We have to have that consistent engagement that gets them to understand that their principles and values, that everything that they believe in, are really aligned with us. And we have to have a long-range strategic vision and plan for that. Because I think the most important thing that you have to build relationships. And that's the critical thing that we're going to turn the tide with the left. And right now, President Trump's approval rating is hovering between 27 and 34% in the black community. Never been heard of before. And think about what he said, in 2016. What have you got to lose? And he's backed it up. So I think that that's what we have to continue to build on at our level here in all of these major population centers we see in the state of Texas.
I think we can achieve that. That's an important goal to achieve. But the bigger challenge that we face is bringing everybody together. Now that we've come through the primary, now that we actually have one of the smallest numbers of runoffs, and we had a small number of challenge primaries compared to history, but still, Republicans historically have a tougher time. We're so independent, we're so conservative, we are so values focused that our biggest challenge is coming together and make sure we deliver victory in the elections, because we can't achieve our objectives without winning, and we can't be around for the long term to make those gains if we don't hold those offices and we don't advance those principles. So the biggest challenge now is continuing to execute on the plan that is working right now to make sure that we grow the party all over the state, and growing the party not just in an ephemeral future sense, but right now with volunteers who are on board, with precinct chairs, to make sure that we have less empty precinct chair spots, to make sure that more of our candidates in the city councils and school boards have support, to make sure that together that we have delegates at convention, that we are together marching to victory in 2020. President Trump is going to help us spread the message, and he is. We have hundreds of thousands of new people coming to the Republican Party thanks to him and his message. It's up to us to make sure that we connect between that high level and the rubber meeting the road, and that's the work of the party. That's the biggest challenge for 2020, and thank God we're making big advances towards that.
All right, so here's a word-for-word question from one of our local precinct chairs, and it's regarding the RPT process of allocating resources. I keep hearing about helping out more with local races. Be specific about who will determine which candidates are deemed worthy of help. On what basis will those candidates be chosen to receive help? And how will money, resources, endorsements, etc. be prioritized fairly over all of the local races throughout the state?
Well, this is actually a really good question because it reflects a misunderstanding. When we say we've got resources available for candidates across the state, what we're talking about is a platform that makes every candidate running as a Republican more effective against the Democrats. What we're talking about is a tool set, a set of resources that is available to them. What we are not talking about is a big bag of money. And so there is no question for how do you divvy up the money, because the party's job is in fact not to give money to candidates except for the Candidate Resource Committee. And by the way, everyone's welcome to apply to the Candidate Resource Committee, everybody below Texas House level. They have a couple $100,000 they can divvy up. But think about it, we had 3,401 candidates just in our official party primary at the state level. That didn't include a single city council or school board candidate, you divide anything by 10,000 and the ending number is tiny. There's no point to try to have the party be a funnel for money to those folks. What we have done is build the best voter data there is, the block walking system, the phone banking system, the texting system, the event calendar map, make all of that available for free to every candidate. What we have done is work to make sure that those phone numbers are the best phone numbers we've ever had, to make sure those names are the best names we've ever had, to go do the voter registration to increase the base of Republican voters, to make sure that it all works together for everyone, so that that city council candidate who's running in Jeff Leach's district is benefiting from the block walking that's being done by Jeff Leach's team, because we've identified a bunch of voters and they get all that data for free. That Van Taylor's work in the parts of his district that overlap with that candidate, we've provided that infrastructure that's available for everybody. So the good news is, the answer is, everybody gets exactly the same, and it's not about picking and choosing who's worthy. We at the party are not in the business of dividing Republicans. We're in the business of providing victory for Republicans.
You know, I started an organization back when I was in Congress called the Guardian Fund. It was a PAC that sought to expand the amount of military and minority conservatives that we had. And we do the exact same thing. We get a lot of applications that would come in, and then we would look at, you know, where was the priority? Where were the critical races? I mean, like a Tom Cotton running for senator, like a Joni Ernst running for senator. And so what we would do is we would look at and we would raise the resources. And what we would do is provide what is called independent expenditures, where outside of the campaign, we would also lend some top cover to that campaign and get even stronger messaging out on commercials, billboards, radio ads, and things of this nature. So you're absolutely right. You have to have this toolbox that you're able to equitably spread out across, you know, the state of Texas to all of these candidates that are out there. But I think it's also important that we look and see where the left wants to prioritize, and we've got to meet them there as well. And we have to run those independent expenditures to make sure that we don't lose those critical seats. And some of the critical seats that we see are going to be in places like Dallas County in North Texas and down in Houston, Harris County, because their number one goal is to flip the Texas State House. 9 State House seats to do that. Why? Because redistricting is coming up. Texas picks up 3 congressional districts. So you're right. You're going to provide all the tools, the resources. You want to provide the data, the database. You want to make sure that you're encouraging the volunteers to get out there and do the block walking and the calls. But you also need to say, where can I prioritize some things? Where can I make sure that I have some main efforts? Where can I make sure I have some weighted efforts? Because I don't want to see them be able to achieve their goals and their objectives. So that would be one of the focuses that I would have, running those independent expenditures in key areas and key races to have a collateral coverage.
All right, in Austin, where we have a Republican majority in the House, Republican majority in the Senate, Republican governor, the overwhelming majority of Republican voters in Texas are in strong support of a bigger pro-life agenda, mainly a heartbeat bill that we already see passed in several other states. What is the role of the RPT when it comes to getting a heartbeat bill up for a vote in the next session?
As I said, that's one of the priorities. When I think about what has happened in the black community since Roe versus Wade, 1973, 20 million black babies have been murdered in the womb. Let me put that in context. The year before I was born in 1960, the population of the black community in the United States of America was 18.6 million. In 47 years, you've wiped out the entire population of the black community in 1960. The second largest abortion providing headquarters in the world is located in Texas, in Houston, Texas. Planned Parenthood, a 7-story building. An organization that was founded by white supremacists and a racist. That looked at a person like me and would call me an undesirable and weed. This is personal for me. And I think that we need to take it and make it personal for ourselves. Because as long as we continue to allow the greatest gift that God has given us, the gift of life, to be murdered, I don't think America will truly be blessed like it should be blessed.
This is a thing that we worked on. We worked on the heartbeat bill. We worked on the Preborn Non-Discrimination Act. We also worked on defunding Planned Parenthood. And we actually worked on the abolition of abortion. And we had a lot of people at the Capitol, and frankly, we had a lot of people in the Republican Party who weren't unified on those fronts. I do think that as the session went on and we saw some other states start to pass those heartbeat bills, I think it is much more likely that we'll advance it. I am grateful that we finally ended taxpayer funding of Planned Parenthood in Texas. That is way over. And I'm convinced that our delegates are the most pro-life group of people you'll find, and that it will continue to be a significant priority for the party. And we should see big gains, because we're going to make gains in our Texas House. We're not just going to not lose 9 seats and not worry about flipping and not worry about redistricting. We're going to make gains, and those gains are going to help us be able to get things passed that weren't able to get passed in the past.
All right, so properly leading any organization with the efforts of volunteers always has its share of struggles. We see it with small clubs like CCCR. We have to deal with Terry. Volunteer. We see it with the struggles at the county GOP. It's all truly a volunteer effort, basically no compensated positions. The result, not all of the time, but a lot of the time, is that with uncompensated efforts, you see less impactful results. So with regards to the position of the RPT chairman, is this a full-time job? Should it be a full-time job? Will you treat it as a full-time job? And should it be a compensated position?
So I'm the only one I know that has done this job both as a volunteer and full-time. And so for the first year and a half that I was elected, I did this as a volunteer. And the joke was that, I had a part-time job. It was 50 or 60 hours a week, but that was part of the time. The challenge that came up as a volunteer was sometimes the party would say, well, the RNC would really like you in DC on Tuesday, or the governor would really like you here, or this club would love to see you on Thursday. And my answer had to be, I'm sorry, I have a work conflict, I can't be there. And after the November 2018 elections, the SREC said, we want a chair who is 100% dedicated only to being chair of the Republican Party of Texas. And if we tell the chair we want the chair somewhere on Tuesday, we want him to be there on Tuesday. And so I agreed to that. And January 1, 2019, I started that. And as a result, in 2019, we raised $3.3 million. That's $2 million more than the party had ever raised before in a non-election year. That's about a 10x return on the investment. That's a pretty good return. It also, more importantly, meant that I was wherever the party, and I am wherever the party needs me. I mean, this week's a good example. I left home at 7 a.m. yesterday. I won't get home till Saturday evening. I have events I have to do on Sunday. This is the third of 6 weeks where I will have worked 7 days a week. The party gets 100% of my time. And that's unquestionably how it is. And right now, given the battle we face and the challenge we face, that's what the SREC said they wanted. That's what they wanted to demand. And when you demand something, you don't... I have bad news for anybody out there who thinks it can demand stuff out of volunteers.
Right.
Right. And having worked as a volunteer and with volunteers for a decade in Texas politics, I've seen both. I set records when I was a volunteer as chair. But it's a whole different level when it's unquestionable 100% all the time.
I will abide by whatever the State Republican Executive Committee decides, and I will tell you this. Since 31 July 1982, I have volunteered to be out there for this great nation 100% of the time. And that means that I had to put my life on the line 24/7, 365. So nothing changes. And so when you look at Texas, Texas is a big state, 254 counties. And if you're not in an election cycle, you're in a legislative cycle. And what we have to come to understand is that we have to be on guard, on duty, on freedom's ramparts all the time, because the left is relentless. And we cannot allow them to believe that we're going to take 1 minute off. So you will have my 110% dedication, because you've always had my 110% dedication.
All right, several precinct chairs had various questions pertaining to Speaker Bonner's situation, mainly about what influence, if any, the RPT had or should have had with the Speaker's decision not to run again.
Well, I don't know what influence they had on his decision not to run again. I think that he should not be in the position of Speaker, period. One of the three things that they teach us in the military, and one of the three things that my dad taught me, who was a corporal in the United States Army, there are these three things that no one can take away from you, but you can surrender. And that's your honor, that's your integrity, and that's your character. When I think about Speaker Dennis Bonner, he surrendered all three of those. And he should not be in a position of leadership in this great state of Texas. I've said that before, I will continue to say that. If he was sitting right here, I say it face to face, because that's what men do.
Yeah, that incredibly unfortunate scenario when, as soon as it broke and as soon as we were told about it, my comment was exactly the same as it's always been. The rights and the decisions are not in the back room. The rights and the decisions are not at the office headquarters of the party. The rights and the decisions are with the voters and the delegates, and that's why I pushed to release the tape instantly and continued to do that until it was released, and was glad to see that worked out exactly as I would have expected. He's not coming back.
All right, let's go with our last question. So when there are two well-qualified candidates up for the same position, a lot of the time voters look for clarity on their decision by looking at the differences between candidates. So what are some of the key differences between each of you that our precinct chairs need to know?
So one of the key differences is that I've come up through the ranks. I've done the jobs in the party. I understand the challenges of being a precinct chair because I was one. I understand the challenges of being a county chair because I was one. The whole reason why I first ran for state party chair is not because I had any desire to be state party chair. It's because the guy who was running for state party chair was, gave a good speech and was a nice guy, but the guy had no idea how to run a primary, how to handle compliance, how to even manage volunteers. He had managed people who reported to him before, but he had never managed volunteers. And this job is a unique set of challenges. And also, raising money for a political party is a unique situation. And I had actually managed to be successful raising money for the Republican Party of Travis County. Let that sit in for a second. And so I knew that the most challenging things in the Republican Party chairmanship, that I was prepared for that I knew the legal and compliance issues, which had been big challenges before. I knew that there was not a chance that under my leadership the party would go bankrupt, which it nearly did before until Chairman Munisteri rescued it, right? I knew that I would make sure that we supported county chairs, precinct chairs, city council members, school board candidates up and down the ballot, because guess what? That's what I had been doing for 10 years.
President Donald Trump did not come up through the ranks, but he's the president. He's doing a real good job. And if you want to talk about a unique set of challenges, get shot at. That's a real unique set of challenge. Especially when you are in charge of 600 of the most prized resources of the United States of America, his sons in a combat zone. And in that combat zone, if you want to know about who I am as a person, I sacrificed myself and my career to protect my men. And as a member of Congress, it was the Republicans who redistricted me out, and I was the #1 target of the Democrat Party. So obviously I know about standing on principle and value. And I won't turn my back on you. Now, I can read. And I think I can understand rules and regulations just the same as I had to read and understand the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I could very well execute and implement any fundraising plan. My fundraising list that I've raised over these few years, as I said, $50 million, is one of the most requested, most sought after fundraising lists, but I will not sell it to anyone because people have trusted me to be the guardian of their resources. And so we will raise the money. But the most important thing, the most unique thing, is leadership and vision, and to be a resolute fighter for the great state of Texas and for these United States of America.
All right, if you want to take a minute or two on any closing comments.
I'm good.
You good? All right, give him a hand.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, real quick question. How many of you enjoyed this forum tonight? This style? Darren Mice, amazing job. All right, before you leave, if I could get your attention real quick. So we have some tokens for you to take with you. Hey, Rustin,